The following is a Claibs online production. Lunch with Claibs and Joe on claibsonline.com.
And a good Monday afternoon to you. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne as we bring you yet another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. 3 different options to watch it, unless you are listening to it later in the day or later in the week on one of the many podcast platforms that we are on. Claibs, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Great weather outside. Busy weekend, and I'm off on the right foot so far today.
I muted my mic there for a second, but I think I got it back on. I think
right.
we're good to go. But yeah, no, it was a gorgeous weekend, gorgeous day today. Hopefully everybody's able to get out there and get some of that work done in the yard or whatever it is you have going on. I am using these final few nice warm weather weekends, Claibs, at the house. I have a smoker on the back deck, and yesterday I forgot to send you a picture of it. I meant to send you a picture of it, but I did the beer can chicken yesterday, and it was good.
So how's that work? Like, do you do like what the Three Stooges would do, is like stuff a can into the chicken and then cook it? Or, when you say beer can, how's that work?
Yeah, I got about a 5-pound chicken from, I think I went to Schnucks and picked up a 5-pound chicken and cleaned it all off, cleaned out the inside, and I cracked open a beer and shoved it right up its cavity and set it in the smoker for about 4.5 hours.
Wait a minute, you left the beer in the can?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the beer, goes in and cooks throughout the chicken. And yeah, so it turned out pretty good. It's taken me a while to get used to figure out this smoker thing with with keeping everything. The issue for me has been keeping stuff moist, keeping the water in there and everything. So it's taken a while, but I think I finally have it under control. And that being said, I do want to mention that we are powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganast Alton Toyota, and also sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert at thehomeloanexpert.com. But one of the guys that has helped me a lot in perfecting the smoker has been my friend Brenton Brown, the owner over at Bootleg and Barbecue in St. Louis. And this week, Bootleg and Barbecue and several other restaurants in St. Louis, they are having St. Louis Wing Week. It is Lord of the Wings, Claibs, from today until November 15th. They are having a wing competition. Molly's and Soulard, 314 City Bar, Bootleggin', The Angry Beaver, Salt and Smoke, Alpha Brewery, Wing Runner, Brick River, Sugar Fire, Missouri Bar and Grill, Shave Duck, Over Under, and the Wood Shack. All of those restaurants are participating in it this week. So go to any of those restaurants and order their wings. Order their wings, and you can go and vote on which wing is your favorite for the ultimate wing restaurant here in St. Louis.
Sounds like a pretty good deal. You can sample a little bit of everybody. The challenge is, I don't think it's a challenge in St. Louis, because wings are done in such a different manner from one restaurant to another. Everybody's got their own signature wing. So it just sounds like it should be fun, because you have quite a bit of diversity when it comes to chicken wings. Yeah, you can go on social media and share your thoughts on whichever wing that you go out and use. They will also have a judge's choice. And Claibs, I texted Brenton and scolded him for not being included as one of the judges for the wing competition. So he said we're already on his list for next year. But not only that, not only is this a fun competition between so many locally owned St. Louis restaurants, Claibs, you and I both know that, and everybody that's watching knows that the restaurant industry has been hit so hard over the last 8 months. And this is a way to just go in there, you get some wings, and you get out. Maybe hit up a few places, get a few different wings, and you're helping out some of these locally owned restaurants around St. Louis. Well, I'm a big supporter of restaurants around here. I try and go to a restaurant at least 3 days, 4 days a week for something. just to support them. And I always make sure I leave minimum 20%. Because they don't make a lot of money off the surface. So, it's up to us to be able to help support them because they do such a phenomenal job in serving us great food around St. Louis that, I believe it's very important. And I would encourage you. And it doesn't make a difference where you go. Just go. Just go out. I can give you a list of places, but I'm sure that everybody has their own personal list that they like to stay with. But it is an important time, especially with the weather starting to change and they don't have the outdoor access or won't have the outdoor access as much as they have now, for them to try and put away and grow as much as they can internally because, they're not going to have the outside access. And, at the rate this town is burning to the ground with COVID, you have to just wonder when they're going to shut the whole thing down. So by all means, get out and support, whether it's drive-through, carry out, you name it, just do it.
Yeah, and this week, I know you mentioned, it's going to be sunny. It's not going to hit 60 this week, but it's going to be sunny. So it's well worth, walking, driving to these places and getting stuff to go. All these places are having stuff to go.
Yeah.
So it is easy to go out there and support all of these. Find more information by going to Facebook or Instagram at Lord of the Wings STL. That's Lord of the Wings STL. Find out the information and that list of 13 restaurants that I just gave you. I know they were doing a few hits on TV, a few of the restaurants this morning, so you might have already seen about it. But it is the Lord of the Wings, the St. Louis Wing Week, all the way from today until November 15th. We mentioned COVID. We mentioned the stuff going on around St. Louis, the Illinois side of the river as well, that I've seen affect businesses over here. And as Claibs, you and I, we stay away for the most part, I think, from a lot of politics on this show. But, last Tuesday was the election. We saw it play out all the way until Saturday, where it was announced that they are projecting Joe Biden to be the next president of the United States. And you and I were talking over the weekend about just the impact that sports played in the election, not to decide it, I think, one way or the other, because, as you mentioned, as you pointed out to me, that, name the athletes that actually went from one side, that said which side they were on with this. It was mostly just a way to promote getting out and voting, but you saw athletes kind of come forward and try to push fans and, everybody to get out and vote. And we saw record numbers and are still seeing the numbers going up and up every time new vote totals come in.
Well, I think it was sports as a whole. But you are correct in talking about the athletes because, we saw in St. Louis the involvement the Cardinal players are having. But I look at Columbia, Missouri, and those athletes and Coach Drinkwitz leading the movement to get people to register to vote. Was huge. And, I'm not stupid enough to tell you that everybody voted for Joe Biden who went out and registered. I'm sure there were people who thought the current president was worthy of another chance, and they went out and registered and voted as well. But when you think about the athletes who got the coaches, who got the universities, who got the presidents involved, you think about the players' associations in professional sports and the ownership, where you have the voting PSAs that they were producing, vote on the basketball court, vote on the baseball field, vote on the football field. Those signs stenciled in. They were very much involved with regard to people being engaged and voting for the first time. How many people do we hear that were voting for the first time? And they just wanted to be heard. And I said this earlier today, fans have two ways to be heard. Through your wallet, how you support or don't support a particular team or sport, and your vote. That's it. You may feel like you were a big contributor at a game where it was you and 50,000 other people were you hooting and hollering, but at the end of the day, you were just that one person, and maybe we didn't hear you. But when you vote, you are heard, and maybe you vote with enough people who hear like you do. Maybe you don't, but when you think about over 145 million people in this country voting, I think the sports had a whole lot to do with it because and I know some people say you can't mix politics and sports. I understand that, especially if you don't openly support a person. Now you can do that personally and privately. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't think it would have been copacetic for a guy to be on a soapbox. Hey, vote for this guy, vote for that guy. You can do that on your own. But the way it was done, I think really woke up a lot of people. And I think that's the reason why we had so many people come out and vote this year. And I think we'll see it again in the state of Georgia because that's the most important election other than the one that just took place for president. Those two senators from the state of Georgia could sway the direction of this country, whether you have a House that's controlled by the Republicans or a House that's controlled by the Democrats. They're going to have a say-so in the direction of this country, whether it's Supreme Court justices, maybe it's cabinet members, a lot of different things come into play. And you're going to see tons of money, hundreds of millions of dollars thrown into those two senatorial races.
Yeah, and you talk about the locally here in St. Louis. We saw Jack Flaherty trying to push for Busch Stadium to be a polling place, a voting place this past year, and that didn't happen. But you saw athletes throughout all of sports pushing for their arenas, their places where they play, to help fans, especially in downtown areas, get out. And I don't know how long you had to wait when you voted early, but I voted last Tuesday. And here in Belleville, I was in and out in 8 minutes. It was very, I was lucky for that, but I saw many pictures, many videos throughout the country of people having to wait hours. And, in the future, whether we, depending on how voting changes in the future with technology the way it is, having more options and more places to go and taking away those wait times will only encourage more and more people to vote.
Well, I would agree with you. And I think you touch on something, technology. The technology has to be that of not having the access to vote, but make sure that the vote isn't corrupted. I think that's what you have to make sure you have a foolproof plan to prevent some sort of scandal that would take place. So I'm happy. I'm proud of the athletes who thought enough to be engaged. I'm happy for the Americans who decided that they wanted to vote. About 71 million weren't happy with the outcome. 75 million were. But, I think as President-elect Biden said, hey, man, we got to come together. We got to turn the temperature down in the room and just see where we can take the country. And it's going to take time. I mean, nobody's going to have an answer overnight. But I think sports had a huge impact on the election and the amount of people who came out. I think that there was some who didn't want to see that. And, you can call it voter suppression or whatever. But I think there were some people who were uncomfortable with the amount of people who decided to come out and vote because maybe their candidate wouldn't be worthy. And you look at what Stacey Abrams did in Atlanta or in Georgia, she almost won the governor's race, but she went out and got 800,000 people registered. 800,000, that's almost 1 million people that she saw to got registered for the general election. So the fact that people were engaged and interested, I'm happy about.
Yeah, that we can move on to the world of sports now with that being said, and this we need to start with the NFL this week, Claibs, because we don't have baseball to talk about. We'll get into Masters a little bit later in the show, but our picks this week, which starts on Weekend Joe, and then we come over here to the lunch show to give you the recap of them. I'm going to say overall, if your name wasn't Frank Cusimano, you aren't very happy with your picks from this past weekend.
Well, it's about time Frank had a good weekend.
Yeah, Frank went 4-1 on the picks this week. So quickly, we went Seahawks, Bills, Ravens, Colts, Bears, Titans, Raiders, Chargers, and Saints, Bucks. Claibs, all 5 of us picked the Bucks to beat the Saints.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's set up well. Bucks are playing good defense. I didn't think the Saints offense was very dynamic. The defense wasn't as good as it needed to be, but somehow they found a way to beat the Bucks last night. But that's the way this season has gone. And Now that we're at the halfway point, we know who the pretenders are, I think. And that doesn't mean you can be a pretender with an above 500 record. And I can name you half a dozen teams that would fit that category. But, you see teams now that have weathered the injury storm and now have figured out what they really are good at, and they'll stay with it.
Yeah. You mentioned that some of the teams, I think all the teams in the NFC East, we have absolutely no idea what to expect out of them right now.
Yeah, we do.
They're going to be bad. They're going to be bad, but we have no idea what team to expect to make the playoffs.
And you know what? Unfortunately, somebody has to, because somebody's going to be a division champion. And I think when you look at that division, what do they all struggle with? Scoring. What do they all struggle with? Offensive line play. What do they all struggle with? Well, the defense. Well, the defense is on the field too much because the offense can't control the ball and because they can't score because they have no running game. And I think that just kind of sums up everything. And you and I talked about this last week. You couldn't name the top 3 rushers in the NFL. And you look at the reputed best rusher before this season would be, in most cases, people would say Ezekiel Elliott or the young man from the Titans. You barely hear their names mentioned. Now, Henry a little bit more. Henry's having a pretty good year. But Ezekiel Elliott, I don't think it's been over 100 yards this season. So when you don't have the ability to control the ball, and those teams in this division don't, I think that's why you see them as bad as they are.
Yeah, yesterday you saw the Pittsburgh Steelers knock off the Cowboys. Cowboys on their 4th quarterback of the season, as the Steelers are still undefeated, 8-0. And we talked about it. They have a healthy quarterback. They have a good running game. They have so many weapons at wide receiver. It still doesn't seem like they are a team you look at and go, oh yeah, that's the team I would expect to be the last unbeaten team in the NFL this year. But yet here they are, 8-0, and their upcoming schedule really, really looks good to keep that going. They're hosting the Bengals next week. Then they're at Jacksonville, and then that Thanksgiving game against the Ravens. So they very well could be 10-0 going into that game against the Ravens.
Well, you know why we look at the Steelers? They're not a sexy team. I mean, they're not a glamorous team and scoring a bunch of points. They don't have household name players. Their running game, most people who don't follow the Steelers couldn't tell you who their number 1 running back is. And I think they just do it. And they do it any way they have to. If you want to muck it up with them, that's fine. We can do that. If you want to have an air show, we can show you that too. And if we just need to play defense, we have to beat you 6-0. We are capable of doing that. So they are a very well-rounded team, a very well-coached team that has found the way to adjust. And they've been able to duck some injuries and survive. But let me ask you this, as I'm thinking about the Steelers. Is TJ Watt the best Watt playing in the NFL?
I mean, there's just so many issues around the Texans that I think if you're going one or the other, you probably go. I mean, God, how old is JJ Watt now? I'm thinking, how old? Because I remember, Claibs, I have gone to the last 9 Super Bowls. The first one that I was at in Indianapolis, so that would have been 10 years ago, I met JJ Watt there. So that means he has been, he was already an established star by then too. So he's got to be at the end of the line, right?
Well, I don't know. I think it's too easy to defend him. I mean, when they had him and Clowney playing and they had a little push up the middle, remember when Vince Wilfork was there for a cup of coffee? That meant you couldn't double him. And there isn't a tight end in the league at that time that could chip block him to help the tackle. Now teams have said, you know what, we can double him, or maybe we can put a tight end on that side, crack him a little bit, on some of the counters that they run, where they don't have to game plan for him because nobody else can beat him up front. And I think that's been the big issue. They haven't been able to get a real push up front from the defensive line, and therefore they take Watt out of the game. Either they can run at him. I don't know if you run away from him because he does have that good lateral movement, But if you run at them and you double team them, maybe even triple team them, that means you don't have a lot of respect for somebody on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. You may have a guard that pulls from the weak side. You may have a tight end that comes in motion, or you may have a receiver come back in motion toward the huddle and make a crackback block. But in that situation, once you stuff him, you got a chance to pick up 5, 6, 7 yards.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how they had a linebacker too at one point that I know led the league in tackles, but I think that was mostly No. For the Texans, Texans, was it Ryan or Ryan something? It was. I thought it was one of his first or last name was Ryan, I thought, and I thought it was a linebacker that was just. I mean, it was a product.
Wasn't he a guy? He tested positive, didn't he?
He very well could have, but I mean, his tackles were basically just a product of everybody being double teamed on the line, and he was the only guy left.
Well, but that's what he's supposed to do,
right?
Linebackers, the defensive linemen are supposed to occupy the offensive lineman, and the linebacker should be free to fight off a fullback and make a play, and that's why he probably had a high total of tackles.
Yeah. So, yeah. And by the way, I do. So Frank has only moved up to third place. He went from 5th place to 3rd place. He's still behind you. Brian Hoffman at 26. Yeah. Brian Hoffman, 26 and 15 on the season.
And
so he is in first place. You're 24 and 17 right now. So Frank is 22 and 19 on there. So you guys are the top 3. Congratulations goes out though to Brian Hoffman, who became a dad Tuesday night. I was texting with him, and I think he was very thankful to his wife going into labor on Tuesday, and therefore he missed all of the coverage that night. And I don't think he wanted to watch it. So I think perfect timing for him.
Yeah, it was just another night of TV missing. That's all.
But yeah, a little girl for the Hoffman. So much like you becomes a girl dad.
There you go. Nothing like it. Born to be around beautiful women.
Hey, it's this is lunch with Claibs and Joe. Still a lot of college football stuff to get to, but before we do that, want to hear from our sponsor, Ryan Kelly.
Mike Claiborne here with the home loan expert, Ryan Kelly. Ryan, the rates are now in the 2s. What does that really mean?
True monthly savings. If your current mortgage rate is not in the 2s, we need to talk. We're saving our clients hundreds, even thousands of dollars a month. TheHomeLoanExpert.com.
We're also sponsored by Mungenast Alton Toyota and Claibs. That's where we will be next week for the show next Monday. Alton, Illinois, Claibs at the Alton location, Mungenast Alton Toyota, 850 Homer Adams Parkway in Alton, Illinois. So we'll get to see our good friend Jamie there. And while we're there, Claibs, I will be renting a car from Mungenast. They rent out cars the same way that you go to the airport and you go to the rental place there, or you find any of those other rental places around town and you rent a car to go on a trip. I will be renting a car from Mungenast next week to drive that out to Nashville the following weekend for the rock and roll half marathon out there in Nashville. So I will be renting one. I don't know what Jamie's going to give me yet. He hasn't told me. I told him I want to rent a car from him. He said that he'd have it all ready for me for that. But hey, if you're looking to rent a car to go out of town for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, give Mungenast Alton Toyota a call and see what they can put you in for the holiday season.
Sounds like a great idea. It's a great way. It's kind of like a demo. It's a good way to get behind the wheel of something that you might really learn to like. I think it's a novel concept that I think they're going to have a lot of success with.
Yeah, Claibs, college football this past weekend. It's so strange to think. I was talking to a friend of mine whose daughter goes to, I think it's Middle Tennessee.
In Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Yeah. So, and he was saying how he was going there to be with her for the weekend because it was their final home game of the year. She's a cheerleader for the team, and he was going there for the final home game. And I said, I'm like, that's so weird to think that there are teams, college football teams out there who are having their senior night, while teams like the Pac-12 are having their first game of the season with how lopsided the scheduling has been this year. And we see the Pac-12 get off to a somewhat rough start this week.
I know that they had some restrictions where you have 4 teams in the conference in the state of California, and their policy about games and things were, they're more on the caution side, and it's just been tough But I thought it would also give them a chance, the Pac-12, a better chance to be prepared when they did start playing. That hasn't turned out to be the case. But, they don't have a big window, though, Joe. I mean, as far as canceled games, I mean, they're already playing the bare minimum. And if you start to lose one or two of those games, and I'm talking about the top teams in the conference, I don't really think anybody thinks, well, Cal's only going to play 6 games or 5 games. Okay, so what? But I think if you're USC, if you're Oregon, if you're Stanford, you feel like, we have to play if we want to be considered for any sort of postseason opportunities, not to mention bowl games. But I think this year everybody's going to be in a bowl game, right?
I think whoever the big schools that travel well will be in bowl games. Or the teams that get good ratings.
Here's the thing: can you travel?
That's the thing. That's why I said if you get good ratings, you'll be in a bowl game, because it's kind of just up for grabs. It's going to start at the top, and every bowl after that's just going to get to pick 2 teams, whatever 2 teams they want, and put them in a matchup. It's almost going to be like a early season college basketball game or something, where you just kind of pick 2 teams and you throw them in there to a shootout or something like that. That's what you're going to get in a lot of these cases.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you make a good point there.
The games don't matter. These teams don't care. It's not, you're not going to have one team ducking another team like at the beginning of a college football season because they don't want a loss on their record. You're just going to get, and how many top players are going to sit out for this? That's another. Notre Dame beat Clemson. By the way, your Notre Dame trash talking last week on the show didn't age too well. I know Trevor Lawrence wasn't playing. I get that, but still, Notre Dame took care of business.
You know what? They play well. I won't take that away from them. I still don't think they're that good. But they play well at home. I thought the officiating was awful. Not in favor of Notre Dame. I just thought it was bad all the way around. But you know what? They took care of home, and that was important. So we'll see what happens. I only base Notre Dame on what they do in postseason. If they're in the tournament, if they're in the 4-team tournament, then they had a heck of a year, because they talk like they deserve to be in it every year. And we find when they do get in it, they don't do so well.
Kyron Williams, the Vianney grad, had a huge game, 140 yards and 3 touchdowns for him, as it's another area kid, another top running back that chose to go somewhere else outside of Mizzou.
Yeah, but I understand that. We have to take into account that some kids just want to leave home.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care how good or how bad Missouri or Illinois are or could be. Some people just want to go somewhere else, and I think we have to take that into account. I see it a lot more. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott wanted to go somewhere else. I know some other kids who wanted to just play outside the area.
And if these kids think they have a future in the NFL, they want to be seen.
Well, they're going to be seen. Yeah, they're going to be seen regardless, though.
If they went to Mizzou, I mean, you were struggling 2 weeks ago to find the Mizzou game on TV.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing. For you and me, it might be a struggle. But for the scouts and the teams of the NFL, they know who you are.
Right. But you want to build fans across the country too. I mean, if you're all these kids,
if you want to,
stuff like that. What channel is the Mizzou game on this weekend?
That's a great question.
What channel is the game on next weekend? What channel is next Notre Dame game on?
Well, Notre Dame has that, but that's a unique situation,
and that's what I'm saying though. That's for some kids, that kind of stuff might be important to them.
Well, yeah, you're right. But I think I'd rather be in the best conference in the country than to be at Notre Dame.
Some
because here's the deal. Here's the deal. While we couldn't find Missouri, Florida as quickly as we like to, I know that there's more people that are going to pay attention to the SEC than they are Notre Dame. Now Notre Dame's got their own following, and I get that. But if I'm looking for pro football players for the future, I'm not looking at Notre Dame. I'm looking at the SEC. I'm looking at Clemson in the ACC. And the people who make these decisions already know where they are. It's just like when we were talking a couple of weeks ago about high school players, and you had these parents, well, this is their senior year, and the scouts aren't going to see them. Well, I got news for you. As I said last week, if the scouts already know who your kid is, and they know whether he can play or not. So whether he has a senior year or not is not going to be a deciding factor on whether they're going to offer him a scholarship or not. They already know whether he can or can't play. So, put the Kleenex up. I mean, it is what it is. Now little Johnny's out there playing, everybody's positive, and he still isn't going anywhere. So now what?
Yeah. By the way, just a little rant. First of all, the rushing the field after the game. You're the number 4 ranked team in the nation. Don't rush the field after you beat number 1, and don't do it during don't do it during a pandemic either. That's another thing. It's whether it's them rushing the field, whether it was the celebrations outside of the White House on Saturday and the massive amount of crowds all over the country. Let's be smart about this, that it's still out there. And if you want to rip everything that's gone on this summer all across the country, let's keep those words to ourselves. Let's think about that, John, for ourselves too.
Here's what some of them would say, but we were wearing our mask.
It's just what?
You got to do it out. You have to do social distance and wear the freaking mask. Okay.
Right.
It just, I mean, when you look at what's going on in the world, you just shake your head like, how the hell did we get this far?
Right.
And I agree with you. And now I guess they're being admonished. Notre Dame's being admonished for allowing that to happen.
They should. They're Notre Dame. Notre Dame should never ever rush the field, regardless. If you want to, you talk about how highly perceived they are. They should never have to rush the field. They should think that they're going to win every week. To rush the field when you're ranked 4th and they're ranked 1, I mean, that's embarrassing.
Hey, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, it is.
The choir.
It is. I mean, if it's Mizzou beating Clemson, rush the field. If it's Notre Dame, just
if you're like top 5 ranked and you beat the number 1 team, okay, it got something to feel good. Well, although in fairness, if you're Missouri and you beat Clemson in your backyard, they're probably running from Kansas City to get on the field. They're probably running from Wentzville to get on the field. So I get it in most normal situations, but not in this one.
Yeah, it's whatever. Hey, this weekend, I was following this most of Saturday. I don't know if you saw it at all. Did you follow this kid that was doing the Ironman competition down in Florida? Yeah. So I've talked about it before. I've made it a goal. I want to do an Ironman. I have people that are trying to get me to sign up to do one already. It's 2021.
That consists of what? Because you have the swimming and the biking and the running. Which one are you doing?
No. It's Claibs. You do all 3. It's all 3 in one day. It is a 2.4 mile swim.
Okay.
A 112 mile bike ride.
Yeah.
And then a 26.2 mile run.
So you're doing a marathon?
You are doing a full marathon after you swim plus 2+ miles and then bike for 112 miles. 112 miles, Claibs.
So I guess you have to get up pretty early in the morning to get all this done before sundown. Huh?
I mean, as I sit here today, nowhere close to being able to do this.
How many miles can you ride the bike?
I ride a bike. So I think my top right now that I've just gone out and done has been 48 miles. That was just the route that I made, and I went out and I'd done that. So that is the length. The 48 miles is what I've done on a bike. I don't think that would be. It's just time consuming. That's what that one is. To sit on a bike for, it's going to take 7-8 hours to do the biking part of it. Running, I've gotten over, I think I'm at 18.5 miles is my longest run. So that, that'll be here in a few months. It's just to put them all together. But the reason I bring this up, so Ironman Florida was this past weekend down at, I think it was Panama City Beach is where it took place. Benjamin Hockman has a column on it today in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. A young man by the name of Chris Nikich was competed in the event and finished just before the cutoff time of there are cutoff times to where you need to finish each event by and then the overall event by, and he came in just in time of finishing it. But the impressive thing about Chris, he has Down syndrome.
Yeah.
The first ever individual with Down syndrome to complete the Ironman competition. It was such a cool story to follow throughout the day. I know he had there was a little bit of a hiccup in the water, and then he fell at one point on the bike.
How old is he?
I didn't see. I haven't looked up the age of him. I have, as I said, I've been following him. and all of the social media, his social media accounts this weekend. But he finishes the event and immediately has already posted that he's going to come up with something even bigger to do next year. He's only 21 years old. 21 years old, finished it in 16 hours and 46 minutes. 17 hours is the official cutoff time at the Panama City Beach Ironman event. So
maybe he's got to probably climb a mountain next year. What do you think?
I mean, I think after doing an event like this, I really don't think that there are any limitations at all. That's nothing at all.
You know, whenever I think of people with Down syndrome, I always think about my good friend, Coach Gene Stallings, who's meant a lot to me in my lifetime, who had a son, John Mark. And I remember when John Mark was born, he was a kid, and they told Coach Stallings if he lives to be 7, it'll be a blessing. I think John Mark lived to be about 46. Wow. And everybody in the state of Alabama knew him. They got a building named after him down in the athletic department. Is it the soccer field or soccer facility? But he was the life and inspiration for so many people. And Coach took him everywhere. And I remember there was a family that had just had a child that was born that had Down syndrome. And they were devastated. And Coach Stallings called them and congratulated them on being chosen to have a child with Down syndrome. And he turned what they thought was a dark moment in their lives into one of the most proud moments of their lives, to have a child with Down syndrome. And to see what John Mark used to do was just, it was awe-striking. And to hear this story and kind of follow it a little bit really made me think about him. I reached out to him yesterday. I haven't heard back from him, but for those who have been in that situation, you know what I'm talking about with regard to having a family member that has it, because they don't know what no means. You know, they'll take on anything. And like I said, you know, this is a person who I could easily see climbing a mountain next year or doing something of an adventure. So don't ever bet against people with Down syndrome, for sure.
Ryan Kelly should reach out to him, and
that's just who I was thinking about.
Yeah, if anybody, Ryan Kelly just finished up the his climb for the kids just a few weeks ago. We had him on the show 2 weeks ago to talk about that and a few other things. Hey, I know you're going to have Jay on this week. It's Masters Week. That's right. It is November 9th. And we are talking about the Masters in, it's pretty simply put, it's 2020. It's and that's
what else would you expect?
Right, this is what we're getting.
I'm surprised it's not at night this year.
You've been to Augusta National.
Yeah,
you've been down there in April or in the spring when it's usually played. What do you expect from this year? By the way, it was already reported earlier today, Sergio Garcia has pulled out. He tested positive for COVID-19. Sergio Garcia will not be in the Masters this year.
He wasn't going to win it anyway, so who
cares? He's got to win it at some point, right? At some point in his career, he's got to win it.
His ship is sailed.
You can't say that when Tiger's the defending champion after how many years?
How many championships does Tiger have?
I get that, but you cannot do it's anybody's game every year. And hey, this year, with it being in November, who knows who's it gonna?
You let me know what year you want to wager on Sergio Garcia. Okay, just let me know what year you want to do it, and I'll take all the action you can stand. That's all I want to say. I'm anxious to talk to Jay Randolph Jr. about it because I don't know what it's like to play there at that time of the year. What are the greens like? What's the weather like? I think it's going to be very interesting to see how people approach the Masters at this time of the year and how the course plays. And so we'll talk with him. We'll have that up this week on the website, and you can kind of get your thoughts from him on his thoughts on what he thinks and how it's going to play out. And I hope to try and visit with Dan Reardon too. I don't know if you're familiar with Dan's been on KMOX, gosh, 35, 38 years. I remember Dan and I used to do UMSL basketball together, and he kind of got me introduced to the game of golf. And I remember Bob Hyland, we were talking one day, and he wanted to do something about golf. I said, well, I know a guy's really good at talking about it. So they hooked him up and got him a credential. And I think Dan's gone to virtually every Masters for like 35 years at least. So we're going to try and visit with him also because he really stays in touch with the game like Jay Randolph. So we'll be all over the golf this week.
No fans. No, I'm sorry. No patrons this week down at Augusta National. So
it's no different from any other event this year.
I know, but it will still look very odd to not see anyone watching the golfers this week. So, by the way, when you bring it up with Jay, I saw an interesting. I don't know where it was from, but an interesting quote from President-elect Joe Biden about Jay's grandfather. I saw this past
Senator
week.
Randolph.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with what his claim to fame is, right?
Whose?
Senator Randolph, Jennings Randolph the first.
Which claim are you talking about?
The highway. Jennings Randolph is part of the highway bill.
I think he has a lake too named after him.
And the longest serving senator, he served how many presidents? I think he served like 5 presidents, 5 or 6. He had the longest tour of duty of any senator in the country.
Yeah, I saw a quote though from President-elect Biden about Jay's grandfather this past week of the first time that Biden met Jennings Randolph. So something to possibly bring up with,
I will.
With Jay and what Jay's grandfather was wearing the first time he met Joe.
I'd like to know what Jay was wearing when he probably some knickers or some short pants or something. I'll ask him that.
Hey, we lost another good one yesterday. It was announced yesterday morning, almost right before kickoff too, which gave all of the NFL pregame shows a chance to pay their respect to the great Alex Trebek. So many years as the host of Jeopardy. In fact, the longest running host, Guinness record holder for
8,000 episodes,
and it's going to increase too because they're running
Christmas.
Shows all through Christmas,
up through Christmas.
Yeah, but Alex Trebek passes away at the age of 80 years old. I got to say, I mean, my grandma who passed away 12 years ago, it would be something that we would watch every single day. If I was home at 3:30, Jeopardy was on, and we'd be sitting there going back and forth with each other on with the answers.
I was the same way. I watched it as a kid. Art Fleming, the original host of Jeopardy, who used to work at KMOX, I got to know. I used to watch it with him, and obviously Alex Trebek. And I've always thought I would have fun doing that until I talked to. And I had a friend of mine, guy I went to college with. His son won the high school championship. Leonard Cooper, about 5-6 years ago. No, maybe a little longer, because he ended up taking the money and going to Brown. He had the best answer ever. We got a couple of seconds to tell this story. So, it's a 2-day total.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a finalist along with a gentleman from Kentucky and a young man whose parents were from India. And so they're in the green room and they're talking about, the final day. So the final question for Final Jeopardy was, what military leader wrote a letter of apology in the event of his next battle would be a failure? And so, and so you could tell that these guys didn't know. So guy from Kentucky, I don't know who he said. Guy whose parents were from India, he had a blank. And Leonard wrote down, and both those guys lost a lot of money. Okay, that's the other thing, because they were betting against each other instead of Leonard. So they both lost a ton of money. And so Leonard wrote, some guy at Normandy, but who cares, because I just won $75,000. That was his final answer, right? So I asked him, I said, Leonard, where'd you get that from? He said, well, the guy, we were in the green room, and the guy from Kentucky said history was not a strong suit. And the guy whose parents were from India didn't have any real feel for American history. He said, I knew it was somebody in Normandy. I just couldn't think of his name. So that's what I wrote down. So he ended up with $75,000. He ended up going to Brown and graduating. And I forgot, I think he's in law school now, or he just finished law school. He's doing something very good. And that's what I remember about that particular episode. And I met Alex Trebek a couple of times. Everything you see is what he was. Very nice man. He's a Canadian, so 9 out of every 9 Canadians I've ever met are always nice, and just a very gracious individual. Man, he was just such a cool cat. And it was it this year? Yeah, was it the Ottawa Senators who had him announce their first round draft choice in the draft?
Yes. Yeah. So, he I know I've heard him say it a few times where he's always been perceived as, one of the most intelligent men in the world. And he'll tell you, yeah, that's because I have everything written in front of me.
I got the answers. Yeah.
So
can you imagine what he'd be like at a cocktail party with people coming up to him, hey, Alex, I'll take cocktails for 20, 200, yeah, just what a cool cat. And then, we didn't even talk about, and this was before your time, Sean Connery.
We didn't mention it last week, and those two, I don't know if they ever met or if they what kind of friendship they had in real life, but they will forever be linked together because of Saturday Night Live and the characters that portrayed them on that show.
Well, as I was saying, they reeked cool. Both of them, and we're not going to be better off without them. I mean, we're going to miss them both. I think the big challenge here, Joe, is who's going to be the heir apparent to the host on Jeopardy.
They did say that they are in no rush to announce anybody.
Who would you like?
Now.
You have anybody off the top of your head?
I do actually, and I will. And I think that they were trying to mold this guy a few years ago, and that being Dan Patrick. I know a few years ago Dan Patrick.
You're right. I did remember that. Yeah, you're right.
Show. I think it was just on an app that it aired. You had to have like a Fire Stick or something to air it, but they had Sports Jeopardy, and I don't think it lasted too long. But he was still the host, and I could easily see him. He's got to be in his 60s by now, right?
Dan Pugh he's a little older than me because the guy I went to high school with went to Dayton with him, and he was older than me. So yeah, he's got to be 63-ish, 64 at least.
And instead of doing a 3-hour radio show every single day, I could see that easily transitioning into moving on to the host of Jeopardy. But I know. Would be cool. And I know that he has said on his show many times that if he got to pick which one, he would pick Wheel of Fortune to host Wheel of Fortune instead of hosting Jeopardy. But the opportunity is here for him now with that show.
Pat Sajak, who I knew him when he was in Nashville, and he was a weatherman, and he was a weekend guy, and he would play the guitar as he would give the weather. It was hilarious to watch. And I'd run into him a few times during that time and since then. And I always remind him, I said, hey, when are you going to start playing the guitar when you host? He said, there's only a handful of people who remember those shows, and I'm waiting for all the rest of you to go away, so nobody will ever bring that up to me again. He said, but you got to do what you got to do, man. And he was really gracious about it. But, I think if I'm Patrick, that grind of 3 hours a day and asking the same questions of people and trying to keep it live and real and fun, that would wear on me. I think the game show, and I'm going to give you a good example of a guy who's kind of taking it on, is Steve Harvey with the Family Feud.
Yeah.
He there's a look and an air about it that you have to maintain where you have to interact with the contestants. I like the Patrick concept. I think there's probably a comedian we're not thinking of that would probably fit that well.
I mean, when Bob Barker stepped away from Price is Right, how many people saw Drew Carey being able to step in?
Yeah,
and that's, right. I mean, he's got to be on closing in on 15 years.
Mm-hmm. I saw him on something recently. He's got a beard down to here now. Yeah. You almost didn't recognize him, but
I mean, because I remember, I mentioned my grandma passing away 12 years ago, and it was Bob Barker, Alex Trebek, and Pat Sajak, would get her through the day.
And don't forget Monty Hall from Let's Make a Deal.
But
another Canadian.
Yeah, and I know she was not happy when Drew Carey took over from Bob Barker, but there was nobody that could have taken over for Bob Barker that would have made her happy. But I mean, that was, before she passed away. So that's Drew Carey has got to be going on 15 years of hosting that.
You may be right.
Who do you have in mind for Jeopardy?
Boy, I should always ask a question when I know the answer, but I don't. I think the Dan Patrick makes sense. I think I would like to have a person who's a comedian who's quick. And I go back to Steve Harvey. I'm not a big fan of Steve Harvey, but I do respect his work because I think that's what drives those sort of shows. Although with Jeopardy, you don't have a lot of time to banter because,
right.
You got to get those clues up, and you don't have as much time as you do with the other shows. But I'd have to think about that. I might put that on Twitter. Who should be the next Jeopardy host?
I wonder if Ken Jennings will get a thought on that too.
Boy, that's an interesting.
For as long as he was, running at the for as long as his win total went, and then
he came back and beat Holzhauer. He beat Holzhauer, who, by the way, now got a new gig with FanDuel. Have you seen that commercial?
I don't think I haven't seen his
FanDuel commercial.
No, I've seen the Orlando Pace and the James Harrison one.
You know what?
Seen his.
Pace told me it took him 9 hours to shoot that commercial. No, he said because they kept changing it on, hey, let's try it this way.
Okay.
And he was like, they were paying me well enough for me to stay. So, yeah, Holzhauer, it's pretty funny. I mean, you got to watch it. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag.
I haven't seen his yet.
Bad. Yeah. But that's a great question that we probably ought to roll out there and just see what people think.
So you got Mike Emmerich, Doc Emmerich lined up for this.
So
week.
Here's our list for this week: Doc Emmerich tomorrow, Jay Randolph Jr. tomorrow. We'll record him and we'll play him closer to the Masters.
Mm-hmm.
We're waiting on the MVP announcement. Mookie Betts is this week. Also, Jackie Joyner-Kersee is going to visit with us, and you'll hear those folks over the course of the next week. We don't want to give them all at one time. But what we love doing here at claibsonline.com is when we get them, we want to get them out there and have them available to our viewers and listeners. And, we're at that time of the year where we don't have a lot of games, so we might as well go talk to somebody, and that's what we plan on doing.
I know I'm set to record with Ian Frobe of the Post-Dispatch, the restaurant critic, later this week. So I'm
by the way, big restaurant opening this week in St. Louis. The Ruth's Chris is opening up in Chesterfield. 17,000 square feet, and I was out there on Saturday taking a tour of it, and it is spectacular.
When are you taking us out to dinner there?
Soon.
Okay.
Soon. No, we'll do it. We'll do it.
And then also have a plan to one of the guys I'm going to reach out to this week. We just mentioned Jeopardy. A friend of mine that used to write, cover baseball for USA Today, now does a little bit of everything. Ted Berg used to be with USA Today, based out of New York. I don't know if his episode has aired yet or not, but he wrote about it recently. He has been on Jeopardy or recorded his Jeopardy episode here recently. So one of the final season of Alex Trebek.
So he had a chance to be on with Alex this year, huh?
Yes. So he when he saw that Alex had the cancer diagnosis, his dream was always to be on Jeopardy. So he went out, he took the test and everything, and he was on the show. I don't know if it's aired or not yet, but I'm gonna try to reach out and try to talk to him this week as well.
Ask him. Everybody I've known that's been on there says the key to Jeopardy, you have to be a fast reader and you got to be able to use that clicker, man. If you can't use that clicker, if your brain and your hand aren't on the same page, you have no chance of getting the answer.
Right. So we'll
which is probably, I would just be sitting there reading the question and I got it, and I look over and it's like 3 other people have already answered it and they've moved on to something else. That's why I couldn't be on it. But when I'm around my friends and my significant, I'm really good at this damn Jeopardy. I'm really good. So even before the games at the ballpark, we'd have it on in the booth, and I'd clean out 2 or 3 categories, and then they'd have some Shakespeare or something. I'm like, okay, who wants that? Who wants that row? I have no chance. I'm good at some things. I'm bad at everything else.
Yeah. Hey, before we wrap things up here, do want to remind people again that Lord of the Wings is this week. It's St. Louis Wing Week taking place starting today, going all the way to the 15th. 13 area restaurants in St. Louis have come together to not only support one another, but the community, bringing a new, safe, and exciting event to St. Louis. Go out there to one of the 13 restaurants. Go on Facebook or Instagram to find the full list of all 13 of the restaurants. They have wing specials for delivery, dine-in where available, or carry out. and you can judge for yourself. There also will be a judge's choice announced next week. So go and check it out at Lord of the Wings STL on Facebook or on Instagram to find out which 13 restaurants are participating in the inaugural St. Louis Wing Week, the Lord of the Wings, from November 9th until November 15th.
Hey, I know we didn't talk about Jeff Luhnow suing everybody.
I wanted to bring it up. I knew that we were getting close on time with that.
We'll have plenty to talk about next week.
I figured that we would, especially more coming out for that. And the more interviews he does, the more exciting things get.
Well, I got news for you. Those depositions might be very interesting.
For anybody in St. Louis or just for baseball in general?
For baseball in general.
Okay.
Because, he may – when you depose some of these executives and people, there may be some very incriminating things that may come out. So
right.
It's kind of like how everybody wants to see Stan Kroenke on the witness stand here in St. Louis and the depositions of the NFL owners with regard to the stadium. I think Jeff Luhnow may be able to rattle some cages, and maybe there's a settlement forthcoming.
Sounds good. He's Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, Munganess Alton Toyota, sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. We'll talk to you later, everybody.